Well, kids, welcome to another edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And I'm really excited about this episode. This gentleman has put together something that I think all Canadian music fans are going to be very excited about. With me is Mr. Bob Wegner. Where are you at right now, Bob?
I'm in Toronto.
In Toronto. Awesome. The big smoke. Bob has put together a little ditty that's called High Class, and it's basically we'll call it the story of Max Webster in pictures and otherwise. Is that about the gist of it?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. It's a pretty complete history of the band, and it's never can these things be fully complete. But I mean, I went pretty all out. I mean, I
So,
spent about 4 or 5 years on it.
well, so obviously, to a lot of people don't realize. I mean, so 4 or 5 years and 2 years of downtime, obviously, with everything that was taking place, and I don't know how that affected your story. We'll get there in a second, but
Yeah.
so I guess the first question, Max Webster, why? What was your end game?
Oh God, that's the easiest question in the world. All-time favorite band. It had to be done, and it was an absolute joy. I got to spend 4 years, including 2 years of the plague, hanging with members of the band, interviewing them, just culling through archives all over, not just the province, certainly all over the country, finding old newspaper stuff, old interviews, finding recordings, finding photographers, and putting the entire thing together.
So it's interesting. I did a little post today saying that we were going to have you on, and a lot of the comments were, well, they were very consistent. One was probably one of the most underrated bands that was ever in existence, and two, everybody talked about seeing them on tour with Rush. Those were the constants.
Yeah, well, yeah, they did do a lot of dates with Rush, and especially if you're outside of Canada, that's going to be the entry point for most people because those two bands, I don't think there are two other bands I can think of that were so intertwined, being on the same label and management and all that, but just playing over 200 dates together, that's a lot of dates. And so they got to know each other pretty well. And so, but tons of people around here would have seen them, especially around Toronto, and but around Canada because they headlined all over Canada by A Million Vacations, certainly by Mutiny on My Sleeve, but then by Million Vacations and Universal Juveniles, they were a serious headlining act, and they could headline Maple Leaf Gardens here. So I mean, they were a massive band. So, but once you get out of Canada, then yeah, if you're in the States, in the UK, then I bet you 9 out of 10 people will say, "Oh, I saw them back Rush," because they didn't headline too many dates there.
So 4 years ago, they're your favorite band, your all-time favorite band, as you mentioned. 4 years ago, I'm just gonna, I guess, paraphrase or assume you're sitting around going, I'm gonna put this project together. What's the process? How does it start?
Usually these things happen by accident. You just kind of get parachuted into it, and then you just kind of realize you're doing it. I mean, but that said, in this case, there definitely was a moment of this is the project I'm doing because you often have a list of projects that you want to do, and you kind of run your risk versus reward in calculation in your head. And yeah, about beginning of 2019, it was all this is what it's going to be. And but I had done research on Max before this because I had my maxwebsterlive.ca site, which is basically a good chunk of their tour dates. And kind of like that, if you're into Yes, Forgotten Yesterdays, or just any number of these bands, Beatles Bible, all these great websites where you kind of have a chronology of a band's career. So I put a pretty significant dent in that a few years earlier. But then I was all, yeah, I think I want to take this a step further, get into the studio side of things, their creative process, and do commentary on the albums, and then formally interview guys, and then turn it into a more cohesive thing. So I guess it started with me doing the interviews. I started with Terry Watkinson, and and at that point, then I started finding audio of interviews these guys did back then, which is really, really cool to have because, hindsight is the 2020 thing, hindsight. But right after you've done an album, to be sitting down with a tape rolling, the clarity that you have when you've just finished that project in 1978, that's pretty amazing to have recordings of that. So those things started showing up, and And then I started going to photographers, like I said, and going through newspaper archives, old microfiche at libraries. And just bit by bit, it all kind of starts coming together. But all you really have is a giant text document that is growing in size. You don't have a business plan yet. I mean, that's then the next big step after you've finished your document with all your text and formatting it into, Adobe InDesign, and you have your proper layout and everything because you have all your photos now. But then there's the business end. You're getting these printed in the UK. You got to get a customs broker, get them shipped, get them into the country, and find a warehouse and take care of, who's going to be taking care of the shipping, because that's not me when there's 300 copies that have been sold in the last month. So there's a lot of things you have to take care of to get a business plan together, because you're basically running a small business. You're not just writing a book now.
So I mean, some people will say, passion project versus your point business plan. You're a huge fan. So far, being very well received.
Extremely, yeah. It's sold about 500 copies now overall, which is great. And but you're right. It's all those hats. Yeah, of course you're a fan of music. You love the music, but it's so much further than that once it becomes a career, basically. And because super fans of bands, that's definitely not enough to do a project like this. You have to be very business minded to know how to just to make those little things happen, to have the right people around you. Because if I've learned anything from this, it takes a village. You need tons of people around you who are just not just throwing darts for you. They're making major moves to make the world conspire in your favor. You need a lot of help to make a major project like this happen. This is why my acknowledgments pages of the book is 2 pages, which took me a week to do at the back of the book there. So it's a lot.
Well, and that's one of those things where, a friend of mine did T-shirts, and I've done T-shirts where you have lists of people. Like we did one that we interviewed in our first, I think it was year and a half. We had almost 200 different interviews, and it's like, I hope we don't forget somebody, because you get them all on there, but you forget that one person, and it's like, you never hear the end of it.
I know, and yeah, I was quite fastidious with that part of the process, and you're inevitably going to forget someone. And I haven't come across them yet, and they haven't bugged me or tracked me down yet. But yeah, you got to go through so many emails and your phone history and all of your documentation. You do have to be quite organized. And recently I showed a couple of people just my Excel document with all the different spreadsheets of all the things I'm taking care of. And not just your income and expenses, but the organizing of all the tour dates and the recordings and the photographers and the buyers and all this stuff. And you have to be really, really organized to do things like this. And artists tend not to be good at business and organization and stuff, because this is a lot of hats to wear, but you just have to power through it.
Well, and I think, I know it's important that you're sharing this right now, and I think in this first segment, because I know a lot of people, yeah, I should write a book, and they just think, I'll get a bunch of thoughts together, I'll put something together that's interesting to me, maybe a couple other people, I'll go pitch it. Next thing you know, it gets published, and it's a lot more than that.
Oh yeah, there's so much more to writing a book than writing a book. My friend Mike Tremaglio in the States, he's in Connecticut. He did a book with Dave Lewis, who's well known in the Led Zeppelin world. The just basically a Led Zeppelin concertography type thing, and an extremely detailed date by date type thing on Led Zeppelin shows. Lewis knows Page and all those cats well, and this was a co-write with my pal Mike. And their book is doing quite well. It's sold well into the thousands. It's doing really, really nicely. And Mike told me when I thought I was about 90 or 95% done 3 years ago. Oh, sweet child, if only you knew. But there I was thinking I'm about 90 something percent done. And he says, "Oh, Bob, the last 5% is 95% of the work." And I had a distant idea of what I think he might have meant by that. And it turns out, oh no, he was completely correct. At that point, all I had was a document with the work that I'd done in terms of the actual content of the book, just the text. Bang on, 5, maybe 10% done.
You're
And
really good at this, because I told you beforehand how long our segments were going to be, and you're right on point. It's like you've got a mathematical mind here. So we're going to take a break. We're going to pay some bills. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk more Max Webster after this.
bring it.
Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. I'm here with Bob Wegner. We are talking Max Webster. So, for people that don't know, there's authorized biographies and then there's unauthorized biographies. So the authorized would be the artist approves and the artist maybe has a hand in it, the unauthorized. So I had the opportunity to interview Alan Niven, who managed Guns N' Roses during the Appetite for Destruction phase. And I mentioned the book and he was just like, and it was unauthorized. And he was just like, very, very not favorable of the book. Bad on me for not knowing about that. Was this an authorized project?
Basically, yes. Kim is behind it, and when I did the book release party back in June, now that's about 6 weeks ago, 5 of the 6 major band members came. So, oh yeah, I collaborated with all of them in one way or another on this. And so in the end, who came to the party? It was Kersey and the A Million Vacations Me at My Sleeve lineup. So Mitchell, McCracken, Watkinson, and Miles. And to have those 5 guys in a room, I mean, it's pretty surreal when it's happening. And now in hindsight, it's just, people tell you how rare and difficult it is to get guys from old bands together. And I'm realizing now that was really special. I feel like I kind of got the Beatles back together.
Well, the Canadian Beatles anyway, right?
Well,
Because I
really?
mean, right? Because bands break up for different reasons, and you sometimes hear the reasons, and you sometimes don't. Sometimes it's amicable, and other times it's
Hmm.
disastrous. But to be able to get, I guess, that cast of characters together, and I'm guessing it was a cordial event that they all were probably happy to see one another.
God, it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. Just the feeling in that room of just anything bad that might have happened during those years just did not exist in that room. Just my favorite photo from the event was Paul Kersey and Gary McCracken arm in arm with a shitting grin, smile on their face, just with the whole vibe of, hey, I did the first half of this really cool thing. Hey, and I did the second half of this really cool thing. Let's be friends. And it was that kind of vibe, and that was the entire thing. I mean, just Mitchell was thrilled to be there. Miles, just all McCracken, all these guys were so happy to be there. And what can I say? It was a wonderful thing. And those latter 4 guys, that Mutiny, Million Vacations lineup, just those guys hadn't been in a room together since the Battle Scar session in 1980. And people realized how special it was. So there was one moment where those 4 guys were kind of together, and there was a sudden camera scrum, and everyone's there trying to just to get a shot of this really, really special thing. And then we just kind of realized, oh my God, this is now the 4th Max Webster reunion, but never this lineup had gotten together. This the classic lineup who played on the most commercially successful album. And so everyone's taking their photos. And Kim, I found out later, was all, hey, you got to get Bob over here to get me into the photo. And just how amazing that was. Just that one moment.
Um, and to that point, because I mean, they've been, I guess, apart longer than they were together, right?
Of
So,
course.
and so a lot of people don't with time, and obviously people know, like I mean, Kim Mitchell is a guy who people they don't. Some people you have don't know him with Max Webster, and when they find out, they're very surprised. And then there's some people he's only been with Max Webster, and they're so
Yeah,
it's that to break that whole thing or put that whole thing together. I think must have been a very very neat thing.
it really was. And it's funny, just leading up to the event, you don't really know which band members are going to come, and you've spoken to them all and everything, but they're coming from different parts of the province, and guys have schedules and all. And but basically I thought I would honestly have maybe 2 or 3, and this is before I had Kim, and then Kim came on board, and then it turns out I've got 5. And it was just a really cool trip to because I did a box set version of the book. I had 1,000 copies printed, but 100 of them were box sets, and they had a really nice little trinkets in there. There was a replica set list, and that was written by McCracken on the A Million Vacations tour and stolen from the stage. Before the encore type thing, ripped off the monitor, and Photoshop had to fix it because it was crumpled into a guy's pocket. My good friend Mike, he was a young little whippersnapper who stole that, and thank God he did. I had a little coaster in there of one of their 45s, A and B side, and a bookmark of a Massey Hall ticket stub, the sticker that was the ubiquitous sticker that they just slapped all over Canada when they toured with the first album lineup on it. So little things like that. were in the box set, and of course the book was autographed by those 5 guys. So I had to run around the province to get the autographs, and then one by one in that week leading up to the event, they all said, "Yeah, we're coming." So yeah, it was
So,
great.
so it's interesting too, because obviously, most people know Kim. Kim is still out there playing. Actually, a buddy of mine from these parts, Dave Langeth, plays with him. Um,
Oh yeah,
but they all have, they've all done different things, and they all have, some of them are still in music, and some of them are doing different things.
yeah.
Um, it must have been, for maybe a brief moment, kind of both happy and sad for them, maybe in a way, to kind of see that whole thing. Is that did you get a sense of that?
The book and the event, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, complete happiness. There was
Okay.
just not a single sour ounce of energy in that room. It was just joy. And there's someone posted a video. The YouTube channel is called Speedy's Films, and because this fellow Jim Kelly, who's nicknamed Speedy, he shot Super 8 film of all the old bands, you name it, he shot them. And I'm kind of collaborating on some of this stuff and just getting these things, these silent films synced to audio and then put them online. The Pink Floyd footage from the Ivor Stadium concert, that's them. It was a half-hour footage. It's incredible. And these guys were at my event because I showed some Max Webster footage on a giant screen. It was about 20 minutes of Max footage, and that I synced the audio to, which was kind of like doing the Zapruder footage of JFK frame by frame and working it out. It's a really cool process,
Right.
painstaking, but it's so worth it. And on their channel, they filmed a bunch of the party, and you can see it on their channel. There's about 3 minutes of footage. They put together a compilation, and you can really feel the vibe of the event and what this was like. It was just pure joy in that room.
So the feedback from the fans, I'd be interested to know, are you getting any feedback? Are you getting what
Tons.
feedback you're getting?
Tons. People are just so happy with it. People are deeply, deeply dedicated to this band, and it's been absolutely amazing. I've just literally everyone that has bought this book has loved the book, and because my warehouse is shipping them out, so they've gotten around Canada and the States now, and now they're getting overseas, and people are receiving them, and just some of the feedback I've been getting is just beautiful because people just deeply, those who know for sure. Not everyone loved this band because it was left of center and quirky, and very Zappa like in places, just very intricate, very interesting music. The lyrics were, they weren't storytelling lyrics, they were images. Pi Dubois was a very different kind of lyricist. And so all this everything this band stood for was just not what your standard rock band was like. But those who got it really got it. So now that people are seeing this thing, they're just I was going to say over the moon, but I guess beyond the moon is the correct figure of speech for Max Webster fans. And they're just, honestly, people are absolutely, they're just thrilled. It's been such a relief for me that that's the kind of feedback I've been getting.
Well, that's fantastic. You know what? We're going to take one more break. We do have to pay some bills. We're going to be back with Bob Weger after this. All right, it's hard to believe. Here we are, segment 3. We're here with Bob Wegner from all the way from Toronto, and he's got a fantastic book, which he's going to show us the box set here. High
Yeah.
Class: The Story of Max Webster, visual, we'll say audio, visual, storytelling, you name it. And 4 years in the making. The whole band was totally in support of it, which is interesting because sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you might get a holdout. Sometimes you're pulling teeth. Sometimes, you know what? Do it on your own. Good, best of luck. I have a very well-known guy that lives out here that's from a very famous Canadian band that won't come on my podcast. I know what it's all about. So,
It happens.
right. So, show us what
Yeah.
you got there, good sir. Because,
Oh
like
my
I
goodness.
say, this is an impressive work of
Right.
literature.
So here is the sadly now sold out box set version. So it looks like this. You open this thing up, and you get all these fun trinkets on the inside. So there is the bookmark of a Massey Hall ticket stub, as you can see, and the coaster of the Battlescar 45, A and B side. This is the sticker of the first album lineup here, and this was only included in the first 15, and mine's number 1, ha ha ha. And And this is a legit backstage pass. One of the road crew members, Rob Gunn, he was the lighting head of lighting and the road manager, and he sent me a care package after I interviewed him, and it had a whole bunch of Max paraphernalia, including about 15 of these backstage passes from the Amelia Vacations tour, and that's what planted the seed. Okay, you should do a box set version of this, and so the first 14, 15 copies had one of these in there, and number them on the back. So as you can see, mine here is number one.
Look at that. And people love their swag, Bob. They really love their swag when these things come out, right?
Fans love this stuff. And that's Gary McCracken's set list.
Look at
So you can
that.
see America's Veins on the top. What's the second song? Yeah, Charmonium, ballsy to do that second song in. So there's your set list. And
That's incredible.
There. So that's pretty neat. And the book itself, here we go. These are still very much available at here, plug, highclassmax.com.
Listen,
In my best radio.
ABC, always be closing, my friend.
Always be closing. Glengarry Glen Ross. What a fabulous scene that is.
Yeah.
Always be closing. So here is the actual book. This monstrosity is 6 pounds. It's been a delight for Canada Post to carry around the country, I'm sure. And that's 400 pages and just a pretty complete history of the band. I have all these photos going all the way back to when they were a bar band in 1973, 74. That's their first demo on the left there. And so yeah, all the different periods of the band. And yeah, a handwritten letter from Pi Dubois to a fan back in 78 or so. There's some studio shots of them recording High Class and Borrowed Shoes, etc. So it's a bit of a travelogue type thing, going date by date wherever possible through their touring dates. And I have the set list wherever they're transcribed from recordings or maybe from a review. I've got the set list in there wherever I can. And each album has a subsection where I kind of talk about the creative process to put each album together, and quotes, of course, from the guys, because I interviewed most of them. And not just the guys in the band, but like I said, the road crew guys. They had all these great stories from when they were a bar band, especially traveling around Ontario and Quebec. But in the album sections, especially, just talking about just the making of those songs and getting the guys to put in their 2 cents there. And a couple of the engineers and producers are in there. So I had a nice long interview with John Denotbeck, who produced A Million Vacations, David Green, who was the engineer on Universal Juveniles, talking about the technical side of how they put 2 24-track boards together for Rush and Max to do Battlescar, which had never been done before. So he's got a very long thing in just describing what it was like to actually just that huge technological hurdle of putting 2 bands in a room together and having Jack Richardson having a conducting baton, basically conducting the 2 bands while they're both being recorded at once, and the techs are freaking out trying to sort it out, all the technical side. So it's quite something.
And they would have recorded in the day where performance went to tape, so there was no Pro Tools. So if everybody, I couldn't imagine, you get through the song and 10 seconds left, you mess something up and you got to go right back to the beginning and do it all over again. Not that they would have messed it up, but that was the era that they were in at that point.
Well, exactly. And of course, you would try to do your bed tracks as many times as you needed to. But Kim has said that Battlescar, they did about a dozen takes or so, but it was the first or second take that they used. But they were having so much fun. They just kept doing it. Everybody, by then, they sorted out all the tech problems, and they just had a joy running it a few more times for another, couple hours. And when Jack Richardson was teaching at Fanshawe in London, he would sometimes play the outtakes for his very lucky students. So now I know guys who went to Fanshawe and got to hear this stuff, and they said it was mind-blowing to hear them. I'd kill to hear that.
That's some of the fun stuff. I'd be interested to know. I grew up, as you can see, I did my best. I always say I sent Paul and Gene Simmons kids to university. I did my best here, but in the 70s, there's footage that's coming out that nobody had seen before, like it might have been on a local TV station or whatever. And so when you were doing this, I'm guessing you found photos, you found footage that had never been. It must have been very interesting to find it and go like, wow, I had no idea about this, or I didn't know about that.
Oh yes. Oh, you better believe it. There's so much stuff on Max Webster out there, because honestly, no one has ever dug for it. And for a band this, I mean, bands way smaller than Max Webster have had documentaries and books and stuff, and I just thought, my God, this has to be done. I mean, Martin Popoff did a great Max Webster book, and I just thought I got to take this a step further, and just I really dug into fully archive everything I could to have it all into one place, even if it didn't end up in the book. And that's why it became so big, is because I found so much stuff, and I've got my YouTube channel called Max Webster Archive with all this audio that I found from these concerts going back to when they were just really starting out as a bar band, and they have original songs right from the beginning. And of course, they were doing Zappa and Tull covers, and of course, Zeppelin, Purple, Stones, all that stuff that most bands played then. But they were unique right from the beginning because they were doing Tull and Zappa stuff. You know, Peaches on Regalia, stuff from the Grand Wazoo, just really cool Zappa covers they were playing, and they were always good right from the beginning. So yeah, that stuff was really cool to hear. Just the earliest version of Max Webster playing just all this cool stuff that very few bands to this day will cover.
I learned something about Max Webster that I didn't know. And a few months ago, I interviewed Billy Sheehan,
Yes.
and he told me that right in the interview that he had an opportunity to almost join Max Webster at one point.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was in the Mutiny at My Sleeve time when the the transition from Mike Tilka to Dave Miles was definitely not as painless as one may perceive, because Kim thought he wanted Billy Sheehan to be in the band, and in the end it was Dave Miles. But yeah, for about 3 weeks, Sheehan's in the band, and he's doing pre-production for the album. That's all this is in the book. And
Yep.
one of the crew guys told me how they just kind of quietly, secretly went off to a place in Toronto to get Billy to kind of lay down bed tracks, or at least rehearse pre-production. So probably no bed tracks yet, because pre-production is just, rehearsing the songs. And yeah, that lasted for a bit. And Mike Tilka said that Billy was basically auditing their shows for a month or two at the end of 1977. He knows he's getting axed from the band, and there's Billy at stage left just kind of taking notes. So I can only imagine what that was like for both those guys. But he says no, Billy was very nice, complete gentleman, and just about to join the band, but it didn't happen in the end. I think it's because Billy ended up with doing a tour with Talus, because he was in Talus already at that point,
Right.
and they got an opening slot for Van Halen. I've heard that was why. I don't know the itineraries exactly, what the timeline is, but that might have been the simple reason why.
That's bang on information, because that's exactly what he told me in the interview. And
Ah,
obviously
thanks.
another Toronto connection. The late great Phil Naro was part of Talus. So there you go.
Yeah, I miss
Um,
Phil so much. We played together many times, by the way, Phil.
Is that right? I had the opportunity when he passed away. I had the opportunity to promote they did a benefit for him, a kind of a memorial, and it was very well done.
Hmm.
And I lived in Toronto for 7 years, and it was interesting that every time I went to a bar, oh, Phil Murray was here 10 minutes. I never met him. I always missed him by 10 minutes.
Oh,
Just very
Phil, what a
interesting.
sweetheart. And just a killer singer. I still can't believe he's gone. We did so many classic albums live dates together. He just sweetest guy and a great singer.
Well,
And very
it,
sad.
it is, but his son now is picking
James.
up the baton. James, I was in Ontario about 8 weeks ago, and I almost met James, but apparently the narrow curse is still alive and well for me. So
Yeah, if a narrow falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it actually happen?
these are the things that we're pondering right now. But maybe the next time that I get up there. Um, did you learn anything about Max Webster that you didn't previously know through all the research that you did?
Oh, 1,000 things, of course. From speaking to the band members to hearing the tapes, everything. Everything that's an education for everybody else who's reading it was an education for me, because I had to learn it all at some point too. I just learned it first, just slightly earlier. Now the book is out there. Now everybody else gets to learn it. So, oh yeah. I mean, without question, anyone who buys this book, plug, highclassmax.com,
Yeah.
honestly, I would say well over half will be new to people, because there's so much more to this band than the 5 albums that everybody knows. From the concert history to the creative process, and the way that guys got in and out of the band, it's absolutely fascinating, this band. And
Well,
so we have tons of new stuff.
we the purpose of this is to help you sell the rest of those 1,000 copies and maybe have a reprint for some more. So how do my viewers get their hands on this wonderful nugget?
Yes. Yes, indeed. Here is my final plug, highclassmax.com. And there's a simple e-commerce website. You can just grab the book and you're good to go. And yeah, indeed, I mean, I'm about halfway sold. I'm nearly at 500 of the 1,000, and there may well be a second printing. And I'm receiving tons of new photos and uncovering new stuff because people are emailing me and sending me things. Just if it sells fast enough, I'll do a second edition. And you may get people who bought it the first time buying it again because there could I already have 100 new photos I'm going to use in a new book if it happens because people are just sending me all kinds of great stuff. So we'll see.
How exciting would that be?
Quite.
Right?
That's a future Bob problem. I'm just going to breathe for a little while, but by the fall, we'll see. If I sell another 300 books in say the next 3-4 months, maybe this is going to happen.
Fantastic. Well, look, my friend, I thank you for doing this. It was great to get this in the books, so to speak. You know, hearing about a band that, like I say, has been, I guess, gone longer than they were around, but is still a very important part of Canadian music history is so great. So thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely. Sean, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Peace out. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, kids. We'll see you later.